Good afternoon, fellow presenters and viewers of this Research Dissemination Forum. I am Ivan Harris Tanyag, graduate student at the School of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of the Philippines Diliman. And this afternoon, I will discuss to you about the gender dynamics of military rationing here in the Philippine Army. So why I decided to make to study about the gender dynamics of military rationing is because I've always been intrigued about the very idea of why we have adopted military rationing and what are the gender particularities that underlie this very system. As our army began to, as we started to fully implement and roll out military rationing since the Marawi siege in 2017, um, there are some observations that were that were made, or at least studies that were made by the Office of the Quartermaster General at the Philippine Army, which I wanted to share with you, as well as my own personal observation as well, prior to the key informant interviews that I've had during the conduct of this research program. So military rations can also be called as combat rations, K rations, O rations, depending on the contents of the military rations per se. Um, the modern field rations that we know today were developed as early as the 18th century during the time of the American Revolutionary War. But let it be clear that ration or the idea of rationing itself dates back to basically dates back to the history of warfare itself, as early as in the second century, when the great Roman Empire um have adopted this mechanism where most of its soldiers would have food packs that they will carry on as they go to the battleground or as they conquer much parts of Europe. Yeah, and I've made a particular note about this in my at least in the first draft of my research paper, which I have subsequently removed for the purposes of meeting the guidelines of the paper per se. But you get what I mean, no? Yung military rationing that we know today um is largely derived from the American model of rationing na may mga nakalagay um, na viands, na toothpick, or even condiments like salt, pepper, ketchup, mustard. Some will even have fuel packs, such as in the case of Germany or other countries in Western Europe, as an alternative source of fuel, especially kapag walang available na immediate source of energy within their own area of responsibility. So in the pictures you see below are some of the military rations in different countries, in Japan, in Germany, in Poland. And as you see, kahit na may iba't ibang variety ang mga military rations, ano, because of the cultural differences that we have in terms of uh, eating and as well as cooking. You see na may pagka-similarity naman to when it comes to the types of food that they put in the rations. So in the Philippines, military rationing would only start during the American occupation with the establishment of the commissary system. Some of our good friends inside the military would know that this commissary system will continue on to this day. But the commissary system that we have today is largely different from the commissary system that we have adopted from the United States, um the commissary system today, doon bumibili mga service personnel and even civilian staff ng Armed Forces of the Philippines and all attached agencies ng Department of National Defense. Para siyang grocery where people would buy various goods, yung mga typical na nakikita natin sa supermarket. Pero the catch here is that tax-free yung um, lahat ng mga produktong binibili nila. And of course, kaya siya tax-free is because government to private companies mismo yung interaction na to. Direct yung interaction nila. This is not to mention na there are existing laws and policies that govern this tax-free shopping system, which allows all service personnel to avail these kinds of goods to a much lower prices. But let me also be clear that the commissary system also governs much of the dining facilities at the Armed Forces of the Philippines as well, together with the Office of the Quartermaster General. So this is how military rationing worked during the American occupation period. Um, well, after nothing after ng Second World War, um, the American forces were forced to um distribute their own military rations sa mga tao noon kasi talagang walang makain noon. So, doon nagkaroon ng idea yung mga tao nun about rationing system. Na as you see in the pictures, no, nakalagay sa mga lata pa noon. The reason behind bakit nakalagay siya sa cans and not bags because mas matagal yung storage life nito. Mas matagal yung shelf life kapag nakalagay sa lata. This is not to mention in circumstances that were present before during this time. So after the Second World War, of course, we have established a new republic, the Third Republic, and various and throughout the time, yung mga yung mga presidente natin, they have adopted several measures so as to keep up with the growing price of feeding the service personnel. For instance, President Quirino, or at least Quirino administration, passed Republic Act number 591, increasing the subsistence allowance to all military officers at the Armed Forces of the Philippines. The same measure was adopted by President Marcos Sr. during his 21-year rule, prior to the growing prices of food during his time. Like Marcos, President Aquino also increased subsistence allowance twice during her time in office. The Ramos administration meanwhile devoted his time more through the passage of AFP modernization law, which would allow the Congress to allocate at least 50 billion pesos a year for the period of 15 years. Although during the research proper, wala akong nakita na particular law that his administration has passed prior to the increase of subsistence allowance for military officers. Mangyayari na lang to right after umupo yung kanyang successor na si President Joseph Estrada, where he signed Executive Order number 18 in 1998. Dahil again, just like from President Quirino to President Aquino, tumataas yung presyo ng bilihin. And during this period, no, meron rin mga growing calls pa na mag-respond lalo sa needs ng mga military officers. Hindi ko na nalagay dito sa slide na to, but the same applies also during the presidency of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, where she also increased the subsistence allowance of service personnel. During the time of the Duterte administration, the first meal ready-to-eat packs or MREs were ordered for the Philippine Army at the height of the Marami Siege. And as you will see shortly in this presentation, itong mga MREs na to, or at least yung system of buying MRTs have continuously been parang naging kultura na siya right after the Marawi siege, because not only it heightened or it boosted the morale of service personnel, but it also somehow modernizes the Philippine Army as well. So, paano ko nagawa itong research na to, or what are the methodologies that I've used for this research? Well, I've utilized a qualitative research design, which employs a variety of key informant interviews and documentary analysis ng mga iba't ibang polisiya tungkol sa military rationing sa loob ng Armed Forces of the Philippines. However, dahil may 4 na service branches ang Armed Forces of the Philippines, na-focus lang muna tayo sa case ng Philippine Army because, for one, sila may pinakamalaking at may somehow pinakamatagal na experience na when it comes to handling military nations. The occupations of the participants that joined the key informant interviews were 2 senior officers at the Philippine Army, 1 mess sergeant, and 2 civilian employees. So may variety yung pag-i-interview ko po sa kanila. No? Meron pumayag through phone call, meron namang in-person interview, and meron naman through Zoom. So this is like how it went through, at least yung in-person interviews po natin. This interview took place inside the premises of the Office of the Quartermaster General sa loob po ng kampo po ng militar here in Quezon City. On the left, you see one of the interviews that I have had with one of the senior officers ng Office of Quartermaster General. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you see yung isang example po ng mess hall po natin. So, on this picture, you see naman po yung schedule kung ano pong niluluto po ng mga staff po ng Office of Quartermaster General, according dun sa isa po nating mga nakausap prior to this research. Itong schedule na to ay paiba-iba po yan every month, and they si Mess Sergeant po basically yung nagde-decide kung ano yung magiging layout po ng kanilang kakainin for the next 30 days. So on this picture naman po, you see yung actual MREs that were deployed during the Marawi siege. And up to this day, no, because of existing guidelines that was issued by the chief of staff ng Armed Forces of the Philippines, ito po dapat yung maging itsura ng mga MRE packs po natin. So, yung contents po ng MREs are shown on the right-hand side of the screen. May 4 na packs ng plain rice or 5 packs of plain rice. Tapos 3 different viands. Depende po sa type ng meal pack na ma-receive ninyo from the station. Meron din mga coffee, may energy breakfast as well, and some and spoon and fork. So doon sa mga nakuha ko na information from the key informant interviews as well as dun sa documentary research, I like funnel it down to in order for me to develop a modified framework similar to First et al.'s food preferences model. I will explain to you later kung ano tong food preference model refers during the results and discussion part of my presentation. But for now, what I can tell you about food preferences or his version of food preferences model is that it focuses on the individual perspectives ng tao when it comes to their eating as well as their cooking behavior, which examines yung personal food preferences natin based from a micro level setting. In my modified framework, it moves beyond the micro level setting in that it discusses now the role of institutions such as the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the military, and even the bureaucracy, depending on the institution, basically what we're talking about. No? In that this superstructure, these institutions are the ones who are shaping our own food preferences and choices. So depende yun sa nature halimbawa ng food culture sa loob ng military. For instance, or the policies that govern how people prepare their food, for instance. All these kinds of food of this yung mga circumstances that are present inside these institutions are the ones that are shaping yung food preferences natin as individuals. So, in the results and discussion part of my presentation, I can give you 3 specific points uh, that at least characterizes the gender dynamics ng military rationing sa loob ng Philippine Army. So number 1 is yung when it comes to task selection and scheduling of food services. So before I tell you about or at least briefly explain about this matter, there are 3 ways where people inside the military get their food. Number 1 is through coordination with mga private canteens or mga food service establishments. Number 2 is yung through MREs or meal ready to eats, tulad ng pinakita ko kanina. And number 3 is through their subsistence allowance. So may iba't ibang variety naman ng kung paano yung mga service personnel makukuha nila yung kanilang pagkain for pagkain everyday. But in this case, we focus more on how people are utilizing their own subsistence allowance. So according dun sa isang key informant na nakausap po natin, usually kapag nasa labas po sila, nasa ground, parang pinag-iipon-ipon na lang nila yung kanilang subsistence allowance para makagawa sila ng consolidated meal that will cover all 3 meals. So, breakfast, lunch, dinner, nandun na po siya na, covered na po siya. Pero it is the mess sergeant who bears the responsibility for budgeting, grocery shopping, and meal preparation throughout the day. Bakit siya importante when it comes to gender dynamics? It is because usually itong mess sergeant na to, most of the time, according to key inform, lalaki itong mess sergeant to. Parang pinapaubaya na lang sa kanila lahat ng responsibility para yung ibang mga service personnel, may iba na silang gagawin as the mess sergeant prepares their food. Second is yung nutritional and flavor profile of military rations. So this concerns more of the MREs that was purchased by the government back in 2017. According to one of the key informants that I've talked to, the AFP Office of the Quartermaster General conducted a series of multiple focus group discussions as well as internal meetings with selected service personnel to determine which kind of food items they want to include in these MREs. So, due to security concerns, hindi ko siya mapakita yung copy or at least yung results netong study that the Office of the Quartermaster General has had prior to these discussions. No? Pero ang isa sa nanghibabaw na suggestion was that dapat ay hindi masangsang yung amoy ng mga MREs. Basically because nasa ground sila. Ayaw rin nila ng masyadong masarsa yung pagkain nila dahil baka magkalat sila while nasa active duty sila. So after all of this data gathering, the MREs that the military designed aimed at aim at catering yung needs ng mga service personnel regardless ng kanilang gender identity. So this is an actual example of the menus that were developed by the military prior to the adoption ng MREs natin back in 2017. So as you see, no, you have like, syempre, hindi mawawala yung pack rice, yung isang bayan, then we have coffee, milk, plain crackers, then as a dessert, hard and chewy candy, sport, and wet tissues. So as you see here, they also consider yung bigat ng mga food packs na ito dahil syempre kasama ito sa bibit-bitin ng mga service personnel ng Armed Forces of the Philippines. So, isa rin sa mga na-highlight during the key informant interviews was that prior to the internal meetings that the military had with different service branches, was that may ni-raise na comment or at least suggestion yung isa sa mga representatives ng Philippine Air Force kung pwede ba magkaroon ng separate MRE packages para sa babae and lalaki. Well, basically, ang idea nito was that ilalagay na rin dito yung mga toiletries for babae, for lalaki, similar to how Americans or the Europeans do it with their own MREs. Pero as they later found out, medyo magastos ito and it would also be significant logistical cost on the part of the military as well. Dahil syempre, how would you distinguish yung food packs that contain female toiletries from male toiletries? Of course, yung labeling costs, dadagdag rin yan dun sa actual cost that nabubunuin ng Armed Forces of the Philippines para sa production and distribution of MREs on the ground. Finally is yung eating behavior. So this concerns more on the mess halls sa loob ng mga military camps. Nag-share yung key informant natin na na kahit na medyo rigid yung paraan ng pagkain nila sa loob ng mess hall, pinapayagan naman sila na tumabi sila sa kanilang mga, mga kaibigan nila sa loob ng kampo. Although, isa sa mga na-highlight ko dun sa interview na yun was that nung sinabi niya na karamihan sa mga babae tatabi sa kapwa nilang babae personnel, para makipag-usap sila sa magkwento lang sila, mag-share lang sa kanilang mga buhay. So, this kind of behavior signifies a desire for connection and support, especially in an environment that is traditionally dominated by men. So we now go to versus food preference model. As I mentioned earlier, yung food preferences model that he presented in his paper concerns more on the micro level setting on the food behavior ng mga tao. But now we modified this model in that it caters now to the role of institutions in shaping the food behavior ng mga ng kanilang respective institutions, in this case the military. So there are different influences that triggers the food preferences ng isang agency. This includes personal factors, resources, social framework, and food context. So as you see here, here's a model that I've altered. Basically, it's almost the same as versus food preferences model. Although ang pagkakaiba lang niya is that instead of the individual agent, we replace it with development pathways. Development pathways meaning to say, ito yung in, kind of improvement that a particular institution would want to have. In this case, for instance, building a more gender responsive rationing system inside the military. So, governing these development pathways are different different values that govern etong distribution and creation ng rationing natin sa loob ng army. We have ideals, institutional factors, resources, social framework, and food context. So lahat ng mga values na ito, it all boils down to the negotiations, no? So ano yung mga nakakaapekto basically? Doon, ano yung mga considerations na dapat isaalang-alang when it comes to preparing our food? You, of course, you want your food to be safe. You want your food to be cost effective as much as possible. You want your food to be nutritious as much as possible, pero convenient at the same time. You also want your food waste to be a way in which you manage relationships, in that hindi nagkakaroon ng disagreements with the people you're eating at kasi merong agreement with all people inside sa camp, for instance, na this is the food that we want to eat. So lahat na itong mga negotiations na to, you use that to develop sound strategies in order for you to create a gender food choice. No? So what are these strategies? It can be long-term or short-term. Long-term per se is the adoption ng mga policies that would allow people inside the military to practice a more gender responsive cooking as well as eating as well. No? In a study that was conducted in the United States a few years ago, they found na somehow merong gender barriers pa rin when it comes to food preparation. For instance, yung mga, for instance, nagkakaroon ng systematic abuse uh, sa loob ng military kitchen, for instance. Hindi rin pinapayagan yung mga babaeng personnel to participate in decision-making processes when it comes to preparing their food. So, yung mga long-term strategies na to are the ones that we want to at least achieve in the long run. Kasi in this way, it would allow the military to develop a more gender-responsive food culture sa loob ng military. Although kudos to the Philippine Army that because nasabi rin ito ng isa sa mga key informants na dahil sa existence daw, according to them, dahil sa very existence ng gender and development budgeting, ng GAD planning and budgeting, somehow it kind of like it allowed them to develop and instill a culture of gender sensitivity sa loob ng military. And someone coming from a military institution before, because I served before sa at least as a civilian personnel sa loob ng military, every year all officers as well as be it may civilian or military sa loob ng armed forces are conducting annual gender development training programs. So, over time, itong mga training programs na ito, kahit na some people will say that na medyo boring na daw or dahil medyo nakakasawa na daw kasi alam na daw nila. Yung annual conduct na itong mga training programs na ito, it allowed them to at least apply these concepts on the ground. Kaya walang any record whatsoever sa loob ng military when it comes to abuses sa loob ng lessons, unlike in other countries where there is. This is not to mention na yung isa sa mga key informants natin na nakausap, she's also the one who's responsible for developing these MREs right now. So you really see na there is an intention from the side of the military establishment to at least build a more gender responsive food culture sa loob ng military. But still there are still more needed to be done when it comes to at least responding to the needs of both men and women service personnel. For instance, we talk about yung idea ng mess sergeants, no? Kailangan ba babae, kailangan ba lalaki lang na yung dapat lumabas para bumili halimbawa ng pagkain nila? Hindi ba dapat halimbawa toka-toka sila na ikaw magluto o mag-prepare ng budget and so on and so forth. Or for instance, yung type ng MREs na binibili natin, kung halimbawa mas malaki ang pondo na iaalat natin sa mga MREs, would it make the MRE packs more gender sensitive at least, and hindi na kailangan pang mag-alat ng separate budget para lang mag-procure ng mga toiletries para sa mga babae at para sa mga lalaki. Kasi syempre, whether you like it or not, kahit na merong separate na toiletry packs ang mga service personnel natin, when you sum it all up, basically it might cost the same as at least producing a two distinct yet different MRE packs. So, yun na muna yung at least mababanggit ko or share ko for now regarding sa gender dynamics ng military rations sa loob ng Philippine Army. Future researchers could at least explore yung military rationing or at least yung rationing system sa iba pa mga service branches ng Armed Forces of the Philippines. For instance, sa Philippine Navy, meron bang disparity when it comes to the eating habits ng mga Navy personnel natin, lalo na sa mga naka-station sa dagat, for instance. Ito bang disparity na to, it creates a tension between the male and female service personnel natin. Kasi syempre, iba yung pamumuhay na nasa lupa ka, iba yung pamumuhay na nasa dagat ka. This is not to mention yung halimbawa yung mga service personnel natin na naka-station sa malalayong lugar talaga. For instance, yung mga disputed water, yung mga disputed territories natin sa South China Sea, sa West Philippine Sea. Meron bang gender disparity sa kanilang paraan ng pagkain nila, sa paraan ng kanilang pagluto? That's one way to explore things, no? The other way to look military rations is sino bang yung mga tao behind sa planning ng military rations natin? Like, yung mga companies ba na involved sa discussions with MRTs are at least gender sensitive to discuss these matters as well. Kasi discussing gender equality, hindi lang siya responsibility kasi ng public sector. It is the responsibility of all of us to at least be gender sensitive in everything that we do, in every act that we do, not just as an individual person, but also as agents for change in our community. So, yeah, I'm really sorry that I can't be there with you right now in person at the Center for Women and Gender Studies Auditorium this afternoon. But I hope that my presentation is clear to you. And if you have any questions or suggestions on how to better improve this paper, um, yeah, drop me an email at the email address that is shown on the screen. So again, maraming salamat sa inyong pakikinig.
We are now inviting our reactor, Dr. Carolyn Sobritchea, to deliver reaction. Dr. Carolyn serves as professor lecturer of the University and chair of the Technical Matter and Gender Studies. She's also a member of the Advisory Council of the Disabilities Center and vice president of the UP Center for Studies Foundation. She served as a regular faculty member of the University of Philippines Diliman for 43 years, dean of the Asian Center, and director of the University of Philippines Center for Women's Studies, and deputy director of training and executive service. This is very important. She also served as a lecturer for foreign service at the National Defense College, the Philippine National Police, and the Philippine Commission on Women and Women. Thank you for raising as our board of box again. Please share your reactions again.
Okay. Gender ang sabi. Pero yung gender pala doon, pagkain, hindi po ako nutritionist, no? So, hindi ko muna tatalakayin doon. Pero I congratulate for a very valuable research. What is so important, I'll talk as an anthropologist muna before I go into women's studies. Na-document niya yung history ng pagtulong natin sa mga militar. Noong unang panahon kasi, lola ako eh. Alam ko ang kasaysayan ng militar natin. Importante ang pagkain. Kasi nakanuklok sila sa mga kampo and there are years na hindi nila nakikita ang pamilya nila. They were completely disconnected from their family. So the rationing, the giving of nutritious food, pag-sustain sa kanila sa iba't ibang kampo, lalo na ng Japanese period, modern, was really very critical. We have documented this in UP. You can look at all the historical documents on the contribution of our military to the preservation of peace, bringing back of peace in our country. So maganda yung historical narratives na present dito. At sa akin, halaga sa ating mga estudyante, ang ano ko lang, no, yung pagpapahalaga ng rationing kasi pagkain. Hindi po ako nutritionist, pero ang kanyang recommendation, iba dapat sa babae, iba sa lalaki. Tama naman yon, ano? Pero going beyond that, no? Kasi katatapos lang ng mga consultation meetings natin with the police. I'm so proud to say that UP has contributed to bringing in a gender policy, the Philippine military. Tayo ang tumulong na magkaroon ng women's desk, anti-vowsy, may counseling, yung mga trauma na nararanasan din ng mga kababaihan natin ng mga sundalo. Pinilit natin pumasok ang kababaihan. At makikita nyo sa military at sa Philippine National Police, nilalapitan ng mga babae because of gender-based crimes that are committed around the country. So ang panghuli kong salita, pag tinulungan natin ang military ngayon, iba ang kanilang kailangan. Hindi na nila kailangan ng pagkain. Ano ang hinihingi nila ngayon? Bibigyan ko ng grade of 1. Cellphone. We are now in a digital warfare, digital communication. Nasa red alert tayo ngayon. Alam nyo, because of Ukraine, because of the threat coming from China. So sa Asian Center, nag-meeting kami ngayon, red alert tayo. Pero ang kailangan po ng militar, gender-sensitive use of digital communication. Maraming salamat po.